शन्नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शन्नो भवत्वर्यमा शन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वामेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु मामवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ यश्छन्दसां वृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया स्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासम्। शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवम् ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। ॐ अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिवा कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणं सवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इति त्रिषङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम्। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। So in our previous discussion on the Shanti mantras, we started the discussion with this idea that sage Triśaṅkor, whose post-enlightenment exclamation is being expressed in this fourth Shanti mantra, represents suffering humanity. And in that context, we had this elaborate discussion of why I believe that the internal evidence from the Upanishads themselves state that the Upanishadic teachings are universal and for everybody. Not as some conservative traditionalists claim that they can only be studied by a particular privileged group and by no one else. That particular privileged group of sannyasis, swamis, monks, who have given their family life and family duties, worldly duties, for the sake to dedicate all their time to these teachings. For them it is their duty. Yes, they have to study it. That is the very purpose. Why did they become a sannyasin? They became a sannyasin to meditate on the meaning and significance that you are Brahman, you are that universal consciousness, and not only have faith in it, but understand it experientially. So that is the whole purpose of sannyasa. That is the whole purpose of that institution. But, as I pointed out, that the internal evidence of the Upanishads shows not a single monastic teacher. The teachers that we find are husbands, fathers, wives. Among students we find women, great scholars, great scholarly women. And so we were having this discussion. I want to continue that discussion a little bit more, particularly because of the question that Atulji, is that your name? Yes. Asked about why does this difference exist between traditions, between the conservative traditions and the original teachings, which are very universal in nature. I tried to answer that question, and I think we have to delve a little bit deeper into finding an answer to this question, because in a way, if we analyze this question and the answer to this, we will also realize why Guruji did what he did. Because when he brought yoga to the masses at his time, he was very much opposing the general view of the people who thought, who believed that yoga should be studied and by and taught to only to a very certain privileged group. It is not something for everybody. It is not for the masses. This was the prevailing view. And everybody who contributed to bringing yoga out of India, particularly, to popularize it in India as well as to popularize it in the world, going back to one of the first harbingers such as Swami Vivekananda, who took Vedanta to the United States. I think the first well-known, there were most likely a few before him also, but the first well-known teacher who took these Vedantic ideas to the West. What they had to stand up against in achieving what they achieved. And eventually the outcome is good. The outcome is beautiful. Yoga has helped indeed the world to make a better place. But in the process, yoga itself also has suffered a little bit. But these are the kinds of things that I want to discuss a little bit to help us understand why these two views, one view which is very conservative, which wants to keep it limited, why this view exists, and why some chosen few, the great masters, out of compassion for all, have also made all their efforts to take it to the wider public. So this difference, there are two primary reasons why these teachings should not be conveyed to the masses. The first reason is, and this is a very genuine reason, is that because by the masters it was considered to be something very precious. And the moment we have a gem, we have found a gem, we have found a piece of gold, we want to protect it. It's a very natural human tendency. We want to protect it. We want to hide it. We want to save it from others taking it away, which of course in the case of knowledge, nobody can take away knowledge. In fact, knowledge is a kind of wealth. The masters say that the more you give it to others, the more it increases. This is the only kind of wealth which increases by giving it to others. All other kinds of wealth decrease when we give them to others. So the fear of taking away is not so much there, but the fear of contaminating it, the fear of misusing it, the fear of it being misused, that kind of fear certainly is there. And for that purpose, this tendency to protect the Upanishadic teachings, the Vedantic teachings, has been there from the very ancient times. One actually can find traces of that within the Upanishads themselves. So, for example, in one place in the Chandogya Upanishad, the Upanishad says that this teaching should only be given by a father to his beloved son or by a teacher to his beloved student who has proven himself to be worthy of these teachings, but not to someone, not to anyone who has not acquired Śānti, peace, self-control, control over one's mind, control over one's body through the practice of yoga. The Upanishad goes as far as stating that don't teach it to anyone else. Even if he would give you, if he would donate you the whole earth covered with gold and jewels, still then you should not give it. So I think the purpose of this statement is more to show how precious it is, that it cannot be sold. It should never be given out of consideration for money, but it should be given out of consideration for the purpose, for the person, seeing whether the person really deserves it or not. Money should not matter. Wealth should not matter in the context of Vedantic teachings. And that is why even today, I don't know, sometimes things change a little bit in the West, but at least in India, even the greatest Vedantic institutions, they don't charge fees for discussions on such texts. Eventually, the listener gives whatever they want. And this is the same principle which we also follow here, particularly, of course, these classes are completely open, but even the philosophy intensives which we have is we follow that principle, that a person just gives at the end whatever they want to give. That is acceptable. But there should be no price tag. Again, because they are universal. They belong to everybody. Even though, again, within the Upanishads themselves, within the same Upanishad which states this, also Rerivā, one of the masters, first of all does not give the teaching to King Janashruti, but later on when he comes back with a lot of wealth, he actually imparts it. So there are both sides to this, just to treat the subject matter at hand honestly by showing both sides.
Is it on purpose that there are contradictions in the Upanishad?
yes, there are contradictions in the Upanishad. Several, as I said, Upanishad is not a single voice. Upanishad is the voice of many teachers. And the same thing is about Hinduism in general. What we find in Hinduism is a speech of a multitude. There is no single authority. There is no single Buddha. There is no single Christ. There is no single Prophet Muhammad. There are so many different voices. And sometimes these voices get contradictory. And I think that somehow also makes it beautiful, because then you don't stick. The rule is beautiful. It makes sense. But then we also find somebody breaking it. So one doesn't stick too ardently, to a rule. It leaves no place for rigidity. Let's put it like this. The rigidity doesn't come there, because you always find other views also being expressed. So I consider it beautiful. In any case, in that context, the masters always use this word pṛṣṭhaṁ, someone who has acquired inner peace, somebody who has acquired peace on the level of the mind, peace on the level of the senses, which means his senses are no more agitated. And how can one achieve this? Through yoga. Through the practice of yoga. That's what yoga does. So ultimately, what the masters are saying, that somebody who has not, these teachings should not be taught to someone who has not worked with himself through the practice of yoga. So that means, as a yoga practitioner, someone who is working with themselves, trying to understand themselves through the practice of yoga, for them, these teachings are extremely meaningful. So this word pṛṣṭhaṁ, which is the same like, it's the past participle of Śānti, peace, like in Shanti. Shanti means peace, and prashanti will mean total peace, and pṛṣṭhaṁ would be the past participle of that. Usually, in the context of, I'm bringing in a little bit the traditional analysis of what a peaceful person means, who deserves to be taught Vedanta. Just to bring in front of us the picture that the traditional masters had in their mind when they chose someone to find out whether he or she was worthy to be taught these teachings or not. So their considerations were fourfold. They are, in Sanskrit we call them sadhana chatushtaya, the four sadhanas. The first one is viveka. They looked, also when we started, studying the Upanishads, I pointed out that Upanishads were originally one-to-one dialogue. And that is what we find in the Upanishads. It's most of the time, if not always, sometimes two or three are there in rare cases, but mostly it's a one-to-one dialogue between the teacher and the student, in which the teacher expresses. That is the setting. So the qualifications which the masters looked in their students were fourfold. The first one was known as viveka. The master would try to find out whether the student has a discriminative understanding between what is right and what is wrong, between what is permanent and impermanent, between what is transitory and what is eternal, between matter and consciousness. Does he have this discriminative understanding? Does he or she have the capacity to discriminate, first of all, between what is right and what is wrong, so that the wrong can be avoided with the help of sticking the right? And then, does he have a discriminative understanding of what is permanent and what is impermanent, which then inspires a pursuit of understanding the permanent by removing one's awareness from the impermanent. So that was the first criteria that they looked for. The second criteria was they looked for the 6 types of wealth. How much? This is the second. Second has 6. So don't get, just to keep it a little bit. It's a little bit complex, but it is beautiful because we are looking at how the masters decided the criteria of their students. So the second one consists of 6 forms of wealth. And these 6 forms of wealth include, first of all, shama. Shama, which means a peaceful mind, a settled mind. And a settled mind is only possible when we have some level of control, when we have achieved some level of control over our mind, when we know how to settle it down. We have learned it. That is the first wealth, first form of wealth. The second form of wealth is dhamma, which means the capacity to control one's senses and their agitation, Otherwise, the moment we hear something sweet, we run away. We see something, we run away. Or we smell something tasty, we run away to taste it. We will never be with ourselves. So to come back to ourselves, some level of dhamma, control over one's senses, is also required. Then the third thing they looked for was how much is he performing his duty selflessly and how much he is doing it selfishly. The more he is doing selflessly, he's not running away from his duties. That was not the qualification that he has run away from his duties. He is very much with his duties, but he is doing them selflessly in the sense not to obtain something worldly, but for the purpose of inner peace. He is doing it for the purpose of inner peace. He is doing it for the purpose of inner fulfillment. He is doing it for the sake of understanding himself better. So he has a higher purpose. Whether with what he does he have a higher purpose or not? That was the third among the second. So we have 6. Yes.
But isn't it also about, it doesn't really matter what we do, but just to do it with our hearts?
Exactly.
Because there is a beautiful Sufi movie, Babaziz, maybe you know it.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a Sufi sweeping the desert with a broom.
Yes.
And so there is no point, but and he says, I'm sweeping with my heart, and he keeps singing that.
Yes.
Showing that it doesn't really matter what we do, but how we do it.
That is what the lives of the great masters have repeatedly pointed out, whether it was Kabir Dasji weaving his clothes, or whether it was Redasji preparing his shoes from animal hides, or whether it was Dharmavyadha, a butcher who was killing his animals and selling their meat. Even that. So that's why just to continue to do one's duty with a deeper understanding. That's precisely what I mean. So that is the third one. And then the fourth one, Shraddha, is usually translated with faith in the teachings of the masters. But we have to keep in mind that the same Sanskrit word, which is mostly universally everywhere translated as faith, in fact, the ancient meaning, one of the ancient meanings, and the meanings in which it is found in the Yoga Sutra, is enthusiasm, deep interest. So is he enthusiastic about what he is doing? What is the level of his interest? That is the fourth one.
Can you repeat the Sanskrit?
Shraddha. Shraddha. It's a famous word, also in Hindi. Shraddha.
For the third one?
No,
Sorry?
he didn't get the Sanskrit.
Yeah, I know.
Shama, Dhamma, Uparati. Uparati was the third one. And I forgot the fourth one. I jumped to the fifth one. Shraddha was the fifth one. The fourth one is Titiksha. Titiksha, which means endurance of polarities of life. How much endurance does he have? Again, this is something that comes only through the practice of asana. That is the point. Patanjali makes it clear that one develops endurance to the polarities of life, and by polarities of life we mean heat, cold, suffering, pleasure. How much can a person, does he jump like from a sponge with every little bit of happiness and then falls on his face with every little bit of suffering? Is that how he is? Or can he maintain some calmness, equilibrium, equanimity, samatva in these inevitable polarities of life? Can he do that or not? So that was titiksha. That is called titiksha. 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 Titikksha. Titiksha. That is titiksha. That was the fourth one. And the fifth one was strong enthusiasm. And the sixth one was his capacity to focus. They wanted to see the capacity of how much can he focus. Is he wandering? Is he allowing his mind to wander here and there, running from one place to another? Or can he focus? Can he penetrate into the depth? What is his capacity to penetrate into the depth? These were the six. Wealth of sadhana, wealth of means to achieve the goal. So the masters looked and tested the student on the level of these six. So the first one is the power of discrimination. The second one are the six forms of wealth of the means, sadhana. That is what a sadhaka means. A sadhaka, which we so easily translate simply as spiritual aspirant. In fact, sadhaka means someone who has cultivated these six sadhanas. So when Guruji was here, when he said that the whole message was be a sadhaka, it's a very beautiful talk. It's on our website. I think you should go through it. Be a sadhaka. Don't be a practitioner. Be a sadhaka. When he was sitting here. So, what is the sadhaka? Sadhaka is someone who has these six, who has cultivated these six sadhanas, means, expedients, instruments to achieve the goal in his life. And that is where yoga becomes extremely meaningful.
So what was the sixth one in Sanskrit?
Samadhana. Same like samadhi, single-pointedness, focus. And they are listed in the Upanishads themselves. These six are listed in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad themselves in exactly the same sequence in which I am pointing it out. Tasmadevam vichanto danta uparatas titikshu shraddha vittas samahito bhutva. After having achieved these six, atmanyevatmanam pashyati, he sees the self within himself. He sees that consciousness reflecting within the mind, within the intellect. So it comes in the Upanishads themselves. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. That. I know some of I'm very bad at it, but some of my teachers, like Swami Hansananji Maharaj, on the other side, the moment you ask him a quotation, he can tell you the exact chapter, quotation number, and everything. I'm obviously bad with numbers. I remember the passages, but not the numbers. So these are the six, and then now the third one, going back to the original list of four. The third one is how much is his capacity to reduce the coloring that takes place in the mind when it comes in contact with external objects. What is his capacity to decolor himself? How much does he get influenced by external objects, the level of influence? Vairagya. Usually translated as detachment, but a very literal translation is freedom from coloring. How much freedom from coloring? Because raga means coloring. Viraga means someone who is not colored, and vairagya is the state of not being colored. So that is the third one, and then the fourth one. How much desire to acquire freedom from ignorance and suffering is in that person? How much strong desire, drive, inner drive there is. And so these were the four fields which the masters considered when deciding whether the student is eligible to receive the communion of these teachings or not. Sorry? The fourth, mumukshutva. Mumukshutva, which means desire to acquire freedom from ignorance and suffering. Yes?
When you say freedom from suffering, what kind of suffering are we?
All the three types of suffering, adhyatmika, adhidaivika, adhibhautika, we have talked about this, the three types of suffering. Our reaction to the pain that we experience, either because of inner reasons such as sickness or mental depression, etc., or pain caused by someone else, a living conscious being, or pain caused by unconscious entities such as hailstorm, tsunami, earthquakes, floods, etc. All suffering is our reaction to the pain caused by these three causes of suffering in this world. That is what dukkha, basic. Of course, then Patanjali gives his detailed descriptions of what dukkha means to him in the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras, but let us leave that aside. Sorry? Yeah.
George Feuerstein, in his book, I think The Path of Yoga, he clearly says that most of the time the sadhakas never really have all those qualities ready.
Exactly, I'm coming to
usually
that.
The teachers,
Exactly.
the masters are very compassionate
Yes.
and accept us anyways.
Yes.
And then the Gita just says that when we start our spiritual journey, it would be a crime to come back, even if it's hard.
Yes, yes,
Most of
exactly.
the time-
Now I was coming to that.
Yes.
That this is the criteria, but what to do? And what to do? Then the masters, Shankaracharya himself, in one of his Atmanatma Viveka, one of his texts, Atmanatma Viveka, he points out that, see, even if somebody has not gained the wealth of these four qualifications, still he should start studying the Upanishads, he should start contemplating Vedanta, because that will at least help him to gain those qualifications and be qualified ultimately for, remember, Upanishad, the true Upanishad, is not the book, the teaching, but the inner experience. And that can never come until we are fully qualified. But the teachings, a second-hand understanding, should never be stopped, should always be permitted. And that has been, on the contrary, he says that, because I think it seems like even in his time there were people who were saying that, oh no, but this will be a sin, Then he said, no, there is no sin in doing that. On the contrary, it is extremely beneficial to do that. Because even if we are not eligible to these, if we are not eligible for these teachings, by studying them, we have a hope of becoming eligible for them. So let us still study them. This is the view that... what I was trying to say is that this idea that when you protect, save knowledge, it was a kind of faith that many ancient masters had, that the more you protect it, the stronger and the more potent it becomes. And that's why we find several passages also in the Upanishads, elsewhere in other more ancient texts, where, for example, the story is that Vidya, this knowledge, went to a scholar and said, "Please protect me at any cost. I'm like a great treasure." And then when the scholar asks, "But how do you want me to protect it?" Then she says, "Don't teach me to someone who entertains jealousy, enmity, envy towards others, who sees even bad in good, who tries to find bad in good. No one is 100% good and no one is 100% bad. There is this beautiful story in Mahabharata that Duryodhana was the last question that Duryodhana, the evil character of the Mahabharata, and Yudhishthira, the noble character of Mahabharata, was asked. The evil character was asked, "Is there any good person in your country?" And the noble character was asked, "Is there any bad person in the country?" Both, after traveling throughout their whole country, came back to the teacher and both declared, the bad one said, "There is not a single good person in this country," and the good one said, "There is not a single bad person in this country." That was their answer, because the good one said, "Even when I went to the worst of the people, to those who were with the prostitutes, those who were with gambling, the murderers, in the prison, when I met them, I found something nice, something good, something human in them. That's why I can't call them bad." And the bad one, he said, that even when I went to the ashrams, even when I went to all these spiritual cities, all those people, they were playing their dirty politics and this and that. They were fighting with each other. They were saying mean things to each other. And that's why even when in those places there are no good people, then how can there be good people in this country? So it just depends on our own attitude. So, but this knowledge, she asks the scholar. This is a very ancient. It is quoted in a 6th century BC work on Vedic grammar, ancient Vedic grammar. That she went to a scholar and said, "Keep me, hide me like a very precious treasure. Don't give me to someone who sees bad in others, who sees bad even in good. Don't give me to someone who is not honest, who is dishonest, because he will use me to cheat others. The envious person will use me to harm others. And don't give me to someone who does not have control over his emotions, because he will misuse me to delight his senses and will only pursue sensuous pleasure with my help. So don't do that. That will weaken me. That will weaken my strength." So these types of sayings, which we find in the ancient teachings, I think it is everywhere. Isn't it also in the Bible where Christ says that, "Give not that which is holy," very strong language, "give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you." Yet didn't he do it himself? That's what he did, and that's what happened to him. But then he was ready for that. So if somebody is ready to bear the resultant suffering of doing that, it was from time immemorial. Socrates was killed for proclaiming the truth. Mansur al-Hallaj was killed for proclaiming the truth. Christ was killed for proclaiming the truth. Thankfully in India, less people were killed. Not that they were not at all. There are stories of Buddhist masters being killed in ancient India. Buddha in one of his previous lives was killed for proclaiming the truth, for going into a country where any spiritual teaching was not allowed, and yet he went into it because out of compassion he saw those people suffering, and he eventually then got killed. So it is this thing. that is one reason. And then, of course, also you want to save it from contamination. The moment something goes to the masses indiscriminately, it gets contaminated. And in this, I have to say that to some extent, the more yoga has become popular, the more yoga has turned into an industry, into a business of feeding the self-interests of hundreds of people, which is completely not at all in accordance of the true spirit of yoga. But leave that aside. That is not bad. What is worse is when you see yoga styles such as beer yoga, ganja yoga. These are popular yoga styles. You get all types of funny things, coming in the name of yoga. Then one really starts questioning that how to find a balance between making it universal and also this can we call it a tug of war, between on one side trying to preserve it and keep it in its original form, and at the same time also making it accessible. And I think this tug of war has been there from very ancient times. Ancient masters had to face this problem. Modern harbingers of yoga had to face this problem. And all of us have to face this problem. It is there. That is one reason why the first reason why traditions want only exclusive access. That is one reason. The second reason is prestige. That is the second reason. When you have exclusive access to some knowledge which others don't have, you gain prestige over them. This is not so good a reason. This is a very selfish reason. And yet, amongst traditions, such people come into the traditions who live by the prestige that they gain by having these teachings, and that is why they want to have exclusive access to them, for themselves or for the very close ones. I think the Upanishads are against this approach very much. And why I believe that? Because there is a story in Chandogya Upanishad where Maharshi Uddalaka's son, Shvetaketu, the same who heard Tattvamasi, you are that 9 times, he went to King Pravahana Jaivali, and Pravahana Jaivali, seeing that the young boy was quite arrogant and proud, asked him 5 questions to test him whether he knows the answer or not. It was cheating because the king actually knew that nobody knows the answer other than himself. But still, just to diminish his pride, he asked him these 5 deeper questions. And he obviously, despite being a great scholar, he could not answer them. He ran to his father, and his father said, but I also don't know the answer to these questions. I have studied everything, but I don't know the answer to these questions. My son, do one thing, go back to him and ask him with a lot of respect to give the answer himself. The son said, no, I'm not going to do that. No. He uses the word Rajanya Bandhu, that disgusting king. That's the word. I don't want to go back to him. The father said. The father said, okay, it's a chance of acquiring wisdom. Let me go to him. I will go because I want to have that wisdom. So he goes to the king, and the king says, king didn't know that he wanted to have the answer to his questions. The king just saw a rishi, a great sage, coming to his kingdom, and he said, please take anything that you want. Feel free. Just ask me, I will give you. Then he said, no, I have not come for money. I have not come for alms. But I have come to have the answer to the questions that you asked to my son, of whom the answer even I don't know. Then he said, there is a reason why you don't know the answer. Till now, this wisdom has only been kept in my own family. And it is the access to this wisdom that we have been able to rule. So the idea of privilege. That we have been, these are his words, that we have been ruling the kingdom because we have access to this privileged wisdom. So it has never been given out to anyone else. But let me teach it to you. So see, the beautiful thing is that yes, for a while the family did, but the ideal of the Upanishads is to get beyond that. Get beyond that tendency of retaining knowledge for the sake of prestige, which is the tendency amongst several traditions. So we find, this is how we find in the Upanishads themselves, there are these beautiful anecdotes which tell us so much about things that have crept into the system later on and which have created a lot of misunderstanding. In any case, this dilemma is what we face in today's world. The dilemma was already there in extreme antiquity. You remember when we were studying Īśāvāsya Upanishad, Indra gave the wisdom of sweetness to Dadhyang Atharvana, but on a condition that I'm teaching this to you, but don't teach it to anyone else, otherwise I will kill you. I will behead you. And then later on, a honeybee, that's the story, a honeybee, an insignificant creature like honeybee, goes to the Ayurvedic doctors of the gods, Ashwini Kumara, saying that I want to know that honey, that wisdom of honey. Please find it out for me. Such an insignificant creature. When asked by them, those two physicians of the gods go to Dadhyang Atharvana, and then Dadhyang Atharvana teaches them that teaching, even on the cost of getting beheaded himself. And he gets beheaded by Indra. He gets beheaded, but he has given the wisdom. And the message there, which the masters derive, is that Shirshnopi kartanam sahyam vidyam datum prabuddhibhihi, which means the wise people should endure even beheading for the sake of giving the wisdom to others. Isn't it that dadhyang madhu pradhanartham, isn't it that Dadhyang Atharvana, for the sake of transmitting the wisdom of sweetness, tatyaja shirasodvayam, he gave up his head? So that is the message. So these stories, even though whether they really happened or not, whether really a honeybee went to the physicians of the gods, all that is not important. What is important is the message and how we apply it today in our life. So like this dilemma which is there, that on one side we have to make the yogic wisdom accessible to everyone so that the world can become a more peaceful place, that everybody who is in search of peace can find it themselves through these practices. But then on the other hand, we have also to work hard to maintain its originality, which means its original spirit, to transmit it in the most possible purest form without contaminating it according to the needs of the masses. Yes, to some extent, a teacher has to bow down to the master, to the masses, but only like a mother to lift up the child. When a mother bows down to lift up a child, she does so to lift up the child, not to fall down to the level of the child and remain there, but just to lift it up. So when things like ganja yoga and beer yoga, when these things come into existence, it feels like it has fallen down to the level of the masses without any more making an attempt to raise the masses, which is the original purpose. This doesn't mean that when I speak of originality, when I speak of maintaining its purest form, I don't mean that we should maintain a status quo and not change anything and also keep, because there are also irrational things. Humanity has moved forward. We have a better understanding today. Our scientific understanding has changed. We understand the mind thanks to psychology in wonderful ways. We understand the physical body thanks to anatomy in wonderful ways. We understand the universe thanks to physics in such wonderful ways that no one in antiquity, just 100 years earlier, could even dream of having these deep insights into these different levels of reality. So the idea is also not to maintain status quo, because again, as one 7th century master says, that kṣṇe kṣṇe yannavatam upaiti tadeva rūpam ramaniyatayah, which means that which changes every moment and becomes new, that is what remains appealing. The rest becomes, what's the word of the water which is not flowing anymore? Stagnant, yes. The rest becomes stagnant and smelly and disgusting. So renewal has to take place. New information has to be added. Everything has to be tested in the light of new information. That is what the masters say. Shankaracharya did the same thing in the 8th century. When he said, well, if the Upanishads say that fire is cold, will anybody accept that? Simple question. No. And no one should, simply because the Upanishads say that fire is cold, that's why fire is cold. Throw him into the fire, he will know whether it is hot or cold. So he asked this question to several of his opponents who wanted to maintain a view which he thought was against logical analysis. So the same thing we have to do today also. The world is changing constantly. So there is this balance, between preserving the originality, the purity, and yet at the same time also not making it exclusively for a chosen group of people. There is this conflict. And this conflict should exist in every teacher. This conflict as it existed in ancient teachers as well. So I think it was this conflict that great masters like B.K. Iyengarji, like Swami Shivananda, like Swami Vivekananda had to tackle within themselves and find ways to also not to submit too much to the pressure of the orthodox conservative side of the traditions, also not do that, and at the same time also maintain the originality of those traditions and the way the wisdom has come down. Not to be what I guess what I'm trying to say is not to be a blind adherent of some established traditions, but again also not completely breaking away from them, because either way it is limiting. As we can see, I think it is very clear. What are your thoughts on that? Because
I tell you, whenever I sit and listen to the Upanishads, I realize how Guruji was so much established in this devotee's wisdom, and how he brought it into practice. And at the same time, how he was very open.
Exactly.
But for himself, he was a very
yes, for himself he was a very
such established in his own
yes.
faith,
Yeah.
like in his worship, and very.
What mostly hypocrites are the other way round. Themselves, they don't care. But to others, you have to do this. You have to be like this. You should go to the temple every day, even if they don't go themselves. That is what Acharya is about. In fact, the word Acharya, who teaches Achara, by conducting so himself, not by words. So that's why he's called Yogacharya. Yogacharya BK Sangha.
He's so humble. Every time in his books he writes that he had a natural tendency for an austere life and for discipline. Even this he doesn't take for himself.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's so beautiful and inspiring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so one should be rigid towards oneself in one's own faith and dealings, but not impose that rigidity on others. Hypocrites do the opposite, do exactly the opposite. They are cool about themselves, they would do everything about themselves, with themselves, but on others, they are rigid. You should follow these laws, this is the list, do's, don'ts. That's hypocrisy.
I was just thinking about, I don't know if you remember, but of course it might be 40 years back or even more, when Prabhupada, he went first time to Russia. And I don't know how he had the possibility to go, but when he was there, he trained, he gave his knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita to, I think, 4 or 5 people who were really, and when they had to secretly, they had in underground, they had to teach the Bhagavad Gita. Can you imagine? And they got caught.
Yeah, I remember that one person who came to Prabhuji.
There were 6 or 7 were there, and how he told us.
Yeah, 10-15 years they were in the prison.
And how they were tortured in the prison, and he was the only one who survived. All others died in the prison.
Yeah, I remember
And
meeting him.
He told us the whole story. I couldn't sleep for nights together. It was like for me like a nightmare. But they did it. They had so much
Courage. Yeah.
He came to Shivananda.
Yeah, he came. I remember his meeting with Prabhuji on the Ganga at night.
What happens to this person? You could feel, there is something inside very, very hard. So I all the time had that feeling, my God, I don't know through what he passed, But then of course, because he used to come here, sitting there, because I was living there, and so but then I understood.
When he told the whole story.
He was also tortured, and he was the one who survived. Out of all his others, the 2 they died in the prison.
The prison, yes.
But they did it. Amazing.
One last thing that I want to add to the previous discussion which we were having, because Mataji was telling in the last session how when she was reciting the Vedas, there were certain people, who would walk away simply because they saw a woman reciting the Vedas and they thought that it was sin. But let me point out the other side of the story. One great master he died at the age of 111 in 93 or 94. His name was Swami Gangeshwarananda. He was considered the greatest scholar of the Vedas, of the most ancient part of the Vedas. Now I'm talking about the ancient part of the Vedas, where the most controversy is whether everyone should study or not. I'm talking about him. He was considered the greatest scholar of the Vedas of the 20th century. He remembered them, most of them really by heart, and it is amazing because later on he became blind, but I have listened to his talks, and he just fluently quotes Vedic mantras in his talks. And he, at the age of 85, he started traveling around the world, establishing huge books like Guru Granth Sahib, huge books of the Vedas, establishing these Veda temples all around the globe. So there is these Veda books can be found in Bali. I saw 2 in Indonesia, and I think I have somewhere the list. He established around 400 Veda books all over the globe. One, for example, in Vedaniketan is there. One is in Shivananda Ashram. That big Veda book which they have. And he even donated one to the Pope in the Vatican. He even approached the Vatican and gave one to the Vatican. And like this, he established a huge Veda temple in America, which is still running. One is in Ahmedabad in Gujarat. These 2 huge Veda temples he had established. A lot of work he did. My father's master's master he was. And he, at the age of 95, when in 1975 he visited the DLZ, which is Omkarananda Ashram, this ashram in Switzerland, he heard young girls, young Swiss girls, reciting the Vedas. And now let me read his reaction to that. One of the greatest scholars of those times. Look at his reaction to that. I have taken this from his website. I have shared, in fact, the link on my Facebook page. You must have seen it. So what he says, I have visited many places around the world and have established the Vedas them, which has become today a big Vedic volume, but I have never had such an experience which I had here in the Switzerland Omkarananda Ashram. I had been here, I heard young children reciting the Vedas. In India, even the top-class Brahmins cannot pronounce it so well, and here the children did it. I had one worry, that I must spread the message of Veda Bhagavan in the world. Now Swami Omkarananda has removed that worry. I am completely free from worry now. So this is his reaction. So now you can see, when somebody becomes wise, as I tried to depict from the story of that Muslim teacher from Kashmir, when somebody becomes wise, they raise beyond these useless considerations. But those who don't, they, in an honest attempt of preserving the traditions, but that is how they understand it, so they do such things. So one has to understand. When I speak like this, someone one day told me that you are suffering from is that Stockholm syndrome? Is that's the word? I think it's. I don't remember now. No, where you try to save those who have been torturing you. That is Stockholm syndrome. So because I have myself suffered because of those people, then I'm saying something good about them, that even they, in their ignorance, they are trying to do something good. Let's be positive even about them. This is what I then have to hear, that you are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. But I think we have to see the good in everything, even in the ignorant groups. Sometimes the drive is not bad. Sometimes it is, sometimes it is not. So we have to be discriminating, understand, see what is good and what is bad, and appreciate, even if the net result is not good, at least their spirit is good. We have to appreciate that. I think that's how I see it. So whether those sannyasins who are very conservative and all those, still fine, okay. We have conservative people in all the groups. In politics there are conservatives. Now in yoga there are so many conservative groups. This problem is always there. Yeah, exactly. He used to give. Yes. Yes.
He would never hold anything back.
Yes.
Never.
Yes.
Yes. He was just giving. And I remember when he came first time to Rishikesh. And we were just a few people, can you imagine? And Guruji used to give us teachers. Of course, we did not understand
anything.
but he still gave, you know. And then can you imagine even students who were longer time with him, when they came to know, they used to say, Guruji, why you are doing this? Why you are giving this to, they are not even your students. Why you are giving? You know, they used to say to him like this.
Yeah, because he came as a yoga festival,
Yes.
as part of a yoga festival, you know. So he was, because it's Rishikesh.
You know, we were not knowing anything, but we were very serious, you know. So, you know, but that desire to know, to learn, was very strong, you know.
Mumukshutva was there.
And whenever Guruji really saw this, he used to give, you know. There was no doubt about it, you know. He was really like,
He planted the seed for sure, you know.
yes, exactly. That was the same thing also, you know, when he was, I think you were 4 or 5 years old when you went to Kṛṣṇa to learn. And of course he was naughty there, because all these sannyasis, they were...
I was extremely naughty.
teaching there, he was there, you know. And then of course sometimes he was sleeping and
With my pen, you know, poking those senior swamis sitting next to me, or then making funny drawings with teeth and horns, and rounding the paper and throwing it on their books, and they would like open down below. I still have the book. Now he passed away, that Swami. I painted a demon, you know, with horns and teeth, and down below wrote Swami Amarananda. And somebody showed this to him. I did not intend this to show. I was just making this drawing because I was angry on him in my book, and somebody showed it to him. All these sort of things.
these Mahamandaleshwaras, they are really the great ones, the greatest ones. You know, they are not just normal swamis, they are Mahamandaleshwaras.
Like bishop,
And
equivalents of
they
bishop
were
in Christianity.
really sometimes attacking and saying, why this child has to be here? What is he doing here? He should not be here, and like this and like that. Then what Swami Vidyananda used to say, because let him be here, because we are just putting the seeds. You know? And alone to be in that atmosphere, in that studies, even when he was sleeping, doesn't matter. But a later seed we put, and one day it will grow, you know. So
Yeah.
and I remember when we used to go every Wednesday. We used to go to Shivananda Ashram to give a lecture on the Bhagavad Gita. So and normally an hour, 1.5 hours before. So his father used to little prepare what to be taught. So I was also there, I was listening, I was reading the slokas from the Bhagavad Gita because he was sleeping, so we didn't want to wake him up. So I was reading the slokas and then the explanations and like this. And we were surprised. Then we went on the way up to Shivananda Ashram on foot. We went and I was a little forward in front, and he and his father, they were behind. And all of a sudden, of course he was sleeping at that time, his father asked, what did you understand? And he answered, you know? So you could really see how, especially in a child,
when you're
how
sleeping.
the things go inside, you know? And exactly, he was really saying what we discussed there, you know? So it was really, I sometimes just couldn't believe, and, because they are like an open book, you know, like...
Even the unconscious mind somehow.
Really, write on them, you know?
Yeah.
So that is the seed.
Abhimanyu is exactly, that's what I was thinking of, yes, the story of Abhimanyu. But when then his mother fell asleep, then he lost it. As long as she was awake and he was in the womb, he followed everything. But when she fell asleep, then he lost it. That's what the story is. Any case, let us conclude. In the next session, we will that will be part of the intensive course. We will start with the new mantra, Om Purnamada. So let us conclude with this. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः विश्वशान्तिः. Thank you very much.